Hello, and thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to view this today. My name is Aaron Clark, and before I share some of the technical challenges I've encountered, I wanted to give you a brief overview of what makes me unique, how I operate, and what excites and motivates me. Now, first and foremost, I'm a scholar. I love learning new things simply for its own sake. I feel a day isn't wasted if I have learned something new, and if I fail to learn something new, I feel stagnant and lack purpose. Secondly, I am a scientist, and what I mean by this is I am passionately curious about everything around me. This constantly causes me to seek out the cause of things and ask why. Finally, I'm an engineer. I love taking a conceptual model and making it a reality. There is nothing more rewarding for me than to see the results of turning ideas into tangible products or things. Now, I operate under the following philosophy: do the right thing for the right reason. I feel doing good things for the wrong reasons defeats the purpose entirely. And as I said before, I'm motivated by learning and solving problems. But how do I solve problems? Well, I follow the Richard Feynman problem-solving algorithm. That is, write down the problem, think very hard, and write down the answer. And while it might seem facetious, it is actually very useful. See, when you write down the problem, it forces you to identify it. This requires separation of symptoms and causes and understanding their relationships. Thinking very hard means dwelling on it. The subconscious mind is the most powerful problem-solving computer we may ever have. Sometimes I have gotten stuck on an algorithm or method, only to switch tasks, take a break, or even sleep on it, and the solution will come to me. And finally, when we articulate the answer by writing it down, this is done for sanity checking, and it helps us cement that our answer is the correct one. After testing the answer, we may have to go back, sometimes all the way to the problem definition and begin again, but good problem solvers don't see this as failure, but as part of the problem-solving process. So now that you understand how I do the things I do, I'd like to share some technical problems I've solved with you. The first example is actually one of the first I've encountered at my current employer. Employee time tracking is done through the enterprise resource planning software. This software was migrated from a code base written on the old VMS systems, and with each iteration, instead of starting a new SQL-based system, they just kept adding layers of complexity onto the system to the point where it's almost unusable. Because of this, at this point, the only way to see how much time an employee has worked is to wait until the payroll is run and look at their pay stub. And obviously, you can't mitigate problems by being reactionary. So my solution to that was two parts. I searched the entire database until I found the tables that held the timer entries for each individual time card punch. Then I figured out what code was used for clocking in or clocking out. Because this was one of my first reports, I didn't understand all the capabilities available to me in SRSS, so for the second part I wrote a simple Windows form application that someone could use to calculate the time based on my report. And as you can see, it simply calculates the timer punches for someone. Now, in addition to form validation, I also gave it the ability to undo entries in the case of an error. Now, did this solve the problem? No. The users were having to manually add the time. Some users couldn't figure out how to use the program, and one even forgot where it was entirely. So this is the actual solution that worked. My boss showed me how to do the calculation in the SSRS report based on the logic from my Windows form app. The hours column shows the calculation for each set of punch in and punch out. I set up report subscriptions and set the document type to Excel so the reports could be emailed out each day. The column totals let the supervisors easily see the total number of hours worked. For my second example, this is a problem discovered in the purchasing department. The cumbersome ERP software that I had made mention of before did not have a mass price update function for vendor part costs. When they would get their prices each month, they would have to manually go through 3 or 4 windows in the software to update the price for one item, then have to back out of the same windows. Add to the fact that some vendors would update hundreds of part numbers at a time, and the task quickly grew to be overwhelming. Now, there was an existing solution that I don't even want to talk about because it's just too embarrassing. Needless to say, I came up with a simpler solution. So you select the Excel file that the vendor sends you. We had them contact the vendors asking for the specific format. And because we have multiple companies in the Orthman family, we have the user select which company they want to update. Then the user can load the data into the application to verify it. There is error checking already written into the application, so this generally shows them whether or not they loaded the right spreadsheet. Then the user just hits update and it loads it into the database. Does this solve the problem? It did. Purchasers and employees can now update the database themselves without help from us. They can do it quickly, and this eliminated several days' worth of work per month. So the next problem I encountered was that of program portability. There were several dozen VB.NET utilities sprinkled around the company, written for users to work around the clunky ERP system. The problem I discovered was the connection strings were hard-coded in the applications. If we migrated to a different database server, set up a database cluster, or even just wanted to share the applications with another company that used our same ERP software, we'd have had to go in and change the code every time. The solution? I wrote a utility that would be dropped into the working directory of the program, and based on the user input, would modify or create an XML configuration document at the same directory. Now, as you can see, you can specify the host name and the initial catalog and the login credentials, and you can even turn on and off integrated security. I also added a test connection button so the users know that their configuration would work. And this is the XML file it generates. You can see that the password is encrypted, and what I did was I wrote a function that reads in this XML file, it decrypts the password, and uses those values to connect to the database. Then I went into each of our old applications and inserted that function and updated the connection string to use these values. And this worked extremely well. All of our applications are now portable. We can even use the test database we never used to test applications against the non-production database without having to rewrite the applications. And the final problem I'd like to talk about today was the internal sales quoting process we had. Because that ERP system was so hard to work with, our sales guys were coming up with their own ways of sending quotes to customers. And this led to the problem of inconsistencies in our quotes. Add to the fact that some sales guys were promising extra discounts without being authorized to, and the billing department had no clue where the customers were calling and complaining. And finally, modifying a quote usually involved a red pen, which was completely unprofessional for a multi-million-dollar-a-year company. So my solution, which is the one I'm most proud of, is a custom SQL database-backed ASP.NET application. This is my very first ASP.NET application, so while I am proud of it, there are many things that I would improve given the opportunity. And as I said before, I designed a database backend for this, which gives the application the ability to not only save the quotes, but to modify existing ones. And when you create a new quote, it queries the quote index and generates the next quote number for you. And it pulls the existing customers from the ERP database, and based on the customer ID, allows you to change the ship to based on the available shipping addresses in the database. Now, once that is completed, you can simply enter a part number and a quantity, and it will add it to the quote for you. As you can see, the application sums up the quantity and the prices and even shows you the weight, which is important for large steel agriculture parts that have to be shipped around the world. And like I said before, the application pulls the dealer discount from the ERP database. And we did leave the salesman the ability to change the cash discount price depending on what part of the year it was. And you can see if you change that, it changes the calculation. And as you can see, the quote gets saved to the database. Now, managing quotes is great, but unless you can give it to the customer in a usable format, it doesn't do you any good. So I use the iTech Sharp library to give the application the ability to generate a PDF for the quote. And here you have all the information in a neat, presentable form that beats bar napkins. And did this solve the problem? It did. It effectively solved the problem by saving the quotes in a central location, and when we enabled the ability to modify and resend in a standard PDF format. And at this time, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.